But for me as a lyricist, it's a lot more fun to write about just like crazy, fantastical stuff that's out of this world, and taking inspiration from, media that I enjoy, whether it be a film or a video game or a series or whatever. It's very easy for me to draw from aspects of those things and put it into music. And I really enjoy the storytelling aspect of it. And kind of just painting a picture for the listener, if people care enough to listen to the lyrics and listen to the words. And if you're also a nerd like me or any of the other guys in the bands, you'll find an appreciation for that. And if not, then hopefully the music still works for you and you can get down with it anyway. So.
Hey, what's up, Vox and Hops heads? I'm Matt, the vocalist of Cryptopsy and the host of the Vox and Hops Metal Podcast, brought to you by Sound Talent Media and Evergreen Podcasts, where I sit down with fellow metal musicians, talk about their lives, music, and craft beer. Hope you had a killer weekend. I most certainly did. This Vox and Hops episode is presented by Heavy Montreal. Heavy Montreal are Montreal's premier metal promoter, and I'm very stoked to have them behind the podcast. Heavy Montreal have two massive shows coming through the Montreal area in the next few weeks. They have the tour to end all tours. That's right, Sabaton and Epica will be here on October 22nd at Place Belle in Laval. And there is also the Trivium Between the Buried and Me, Whitechapel and Chemist tour. That will be coming to Montreal on M. Telus on Wednesday, October 26th. If you would like to get your tickets to either of these shows, head on over to their website, heavymontreal.com. I have put that link in the description of this podcast. I am going to be at these shows, so you most certainly should be as well. Come party with me and enjoy some metal in Montreal, presented by Heavy Montreal. It's going to be a blast. Now, before we jump into today's episode, I'd just like to ask you to follow the Vox and Hops Metal Podcast on the podcast platform of your choice. But more than that, I would love for you to tell a friend about the podcast. If there's someone in your life that just loves video games, well, you should let them know that the Vox and Hops Metal Podcast exists. You could tell them that there are over 370 episodes where I sit down with some of the world's best metal musicians. We talk all about their lives and music while sharing a craft beer. If you would encourage one of your video game loving friends to become a future Vox and Hops head, that would be something that I would truly appreciate. Now, today on the podcast, I'm very stoked to be joined by Dave Palenske of Volcandra. Get ready, everyone. This is Vox and Hops episode number 371.
I warn you, what you are about to hear is very disturbing indeed.
Hey, what's up, everyone? Today I'm with Dave Palenske of Volcandra. Dave, how you doing?
Very good. Thanks for having me.
Very stoked to be with you. We met very briefly for one night when you were filling in with Storm Ruler, and you came through Montreal back in May, I want to say, of this year, 2022. So. And we partied. It was fun. On Devastation of the Nation. Just a good night. You came to the after party. We were drinking lagers. It was a good night.
Yes, the lagers. I remember. The bartenders were not very happy with us, but we had a good time.
They were. No, they definitely were. Shout out to Turbo House, the best, very cool place that I curate all their beers. I love it. It makes me very happy to do that for them, and they're wonderful people. Sergio, Michelle, can't love you enough, and the rest of the staff. Thank you so much. Let's jump into this. The shittiest question, the one that I like to start things off with, the one that we all sort of like to start things off with. How have you been coping with these glorious years, plural, of 2020, 2021, and hopefully not the rest of 2022?
Well, I kind of have a long-winded answer for that, if that's okay with you.
That's a
February of 2020, Volcandra put out our first record, Into the Azure. We did a tour off of that. Everything went exceptionally well. We came home feeling pretty good about ourselves. Steve Joe from Prosthetic hit us up and was like, "Hey guys, love the new record. Sounds great. Next time you guys do something, hit us up. Let us know. We want to work with you." We're like, "All right, awesome, sick." And then like a week later, everything got shut down. I ended up being furloughed from my job for a month and a half. I spent a lot of time at home with my girlfriend, playing video games, drinking cheap beer. I got really well acquainted with Ham's 30 packs because, you want to make the fewest trips to the grocery store as possible. So you have to get the most beer in one run. So I spent a lot of time doing that. Eventually went back to work, and then I ended up getting a hernia surgery that I'd been putting off for a couple of
Really?
years, because at this point it was like, yes, yes. And at that point it was like, okay, well, everything's shut down. I'm not gonna miss anything by recovering from the surgery. So I got the surgery. Ended up getting really back into going to the gym, staying physically active, because at that point you don't have anything else to do. I'm just going to work, going to the gym, rinse, repeat. And I feel like I fell into a state of complacency at one point, because you're locked up in your house, you're locked up at your job, and I started to wonder, like, do I still want to play music? Because like
Wow,
at this
really?
point it was like we didn't know when this was going to end, and it was a fleeting thought. I had second thoughts. So the rest of 2020 passed. And then in April of 2021, I got a call from Brian Kingsland from
Mhm.
Nile. And Brian and I met back in 2014. One of my older bands was on tour. One of his older bands was on tour. We played a couple days together. But he hit me up and he was like, "Hey man, I have an opportunity for you." And this was around the time that he needed to take time off from the band, because he had a newborn on the way. So I tried out for Nile. And yeah, I learned Call to Destruction on guitar. I learned all of Dallas Wade's vocal parts. Tried out for the band. Got pretty far into the audition process. But obviously Scott Ames got the part over me. But I was told that I was the second pick uh, for the audition, and Scott got the part over me because he had experience touring overseas. He had endorsements and all these connections and stuff. But I took that as a victory and as a
Oh, yes.
reminder to, hey, don't give up. Like that was like a kind of knock on the door, but like, dude, like, okay, cool, we'll keep doing this. And then so let's see, later on in 2021, I ended up filling in on bass for my buddy Frank's band, Soul Devourment. They're a death metal band from West Coast. Frank also runs a record label called Sewer Rot Records. Super cool guys. So that was my first step back into normality, I
Hmm.
guess. So, oh, okay, I'm flying out to the West Coast, gonna play some death metal. Fucking sick. So that was like a nice, like, all right, things are kind of getting back to normal. Then Volcandra, we recorded our EP, Border World, put together our press kit, sent it to Prosthetic, and then Steve Joe was like, guys, I was ready to hand you guys a contract 2 years ago. so so we were just stoked that he was still interested in us. And then not long after that, I got a message from my friend Jesse McCoy about this band Storm Ruler that needed a fill-in guitar player for Devastation on the Nation. And at first I was like, I don't know, man. I need to focus on Volcandra. We just signed this record contract. I don't want to
Hmm.
get too overwhelmed with anything. And then the next day I woke up. I was like, I'm going to do it. Um, and then I ended up meeting up those guys. I had never met anyone in Storm Ruler until
Awesome
we
humans.
actually rehearsed the first day. Yeah, yeah, excellent dudes. And we toured the US and Canada for 6 weeks and ended up becoming best buds. And then now we fast forward to here. Volcandra put out our new EP with Prosthetic, did a couple tours off of that, and now I'm talking to you. So my expectations for where music would take me and how involved I wanted to be with it got completely turned inside out within the span of from 2020 to 2022. And I'm very grateful to be where I'm at now and where Volcandra is, and what the future might hold for us from now on. So there's the long-winded answer for you.
Very exciting. What a trip. And massive shout out to Steve Joe, Prosthetic Records, for having a good ear and a good eye. As always, he used to rep Cryptopsy back when we were on Century Media. I met him back in 2008 when we came through Wisconsin, I want to say. And it was nice to meet him, and I haven't seen him since. But shout out to Steve Joe for continuously finding new cool bands and keeping the music scene exciting. But
Oh
good
yeah.
for you to take that Nile victory as a way and as a sign to keep going. Because some people might have taken it the opposite. Well, I didn't get it. I suck. But that's a mature approach that you took there.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, and I think a lot of musicians probably have imposter syndrome. You probably go through stints of time where you're like not really sure of yourself. And I definitely feel that, on and off. But that was, again, a reminder to be like, yeah, keep going.
Super sick. We have a slight lag. Let's take a 30-second pause just to let the internet gods catch up with us.
Pray to the internet gods.
I'm hardwired in, so it should be working on my side. But Vox&Hops is up and hanging out with my metal friends, talking about their lives, music, and craft beer. What beer do you have on your side tonight that we're going to be sharing virtually, Dave?
So today I have a Citra Ass Down by Against the
Yes.
Grain Brewery, a company that I work for myself. I'm a restaurant manager for one of their restaurant locations. This is a double IPA brewed with Citra Hops. It's 8.2 alcohol by volume. Very delicious beer. Very dangerous beer. If you have one too many, they'll creep up on you really fast.
We gotta, that happens sometimes, and that's okay. But as long as you're responsible and understand your limits in the future and you don't try to do it too often. Love Citra Hops, obviously. It's got that, I always say, smells and tastes a bit farty.
That's one way to put it.
Other people say cat piss is another one, but I love it. On my side, I'm drinking something special. This is the brand new Vox&Hops collab that is getting distributed right now. It was the festival beer for Heavy Montreal Presents Vox&Hops Brewtal Montreal that happened in early September of this year, where DSI played Cataclysm and Inhuman Condition. It was just a killer time. Massive shout out to Palenske for creating this brew, as Světlé Výčepní, 4% light Czech lager. I love it. I'm all about this beer with the killer artwork from Filip Ivanovic. Obviously, love it to death. I'm going to crack this, and I would love to hear about your very first beer.
My very first beer, I think I was probably like 19.
Really?
I was hanging out at my buddy's band practice. Yeah. Sorry, breaking the law over here. I was hanging out at my buddy's band practice, just kind of watching them play, and it ended up being a band I eventually joined. But I had it Budweiser, and I thought it was absolutely terrible. You're like, why would anybody drink this? This is awful. And I remember immediately chasing it with water. I was just like, no, got to get the taste out of my mouth. I hated it because at that point I was more of a weed smoker. Alcohol wasn't really my thing. But like with all good things, you get an acquired taste. So
absolutely, the first time I heard Cryptopsy, I was like, what the fuck are these vocals? That's a true story. Shout out to Luke Orr for showing me Cryptopsy on the train back home from Montreal to Two Mansions. I don't know, 25 years ago, 20 years ago at this point. This pours out gorgeously light. You can almost see through it. It's fucking gorgeous. They're killing it. Lepotskaya. Love it. Got the cereal on the nose. Cheers. Oh, it's light. So crushable. 4%. So I can have another one after this, and I'll be at the same level as you, which makes me happy. But I'll have to pee more. Into craft beer, the evolution from that Budweiser, watching your friend's band perform, play, practice, that Budweiser when you were watching your friends practice. Talk to me about the evolution of getting into craft beer. You work at Against the Grain, which is a very cool brewery, actually. So talk to me about that whole journey, please.
Going back to that Budweiser, and I think my preference for smoking weed at the time over alcohol. I think the first beer that I really got into, I couldn't tell you what brewery it was or what specific beer it was, but IPAs were those were the beers that stuck with me, because I was like, oh, this kind of tastes like weed. I don't know if this was the first beer that I had, but I remember having a beer called Smells Like a Safety Meeting, and I just thought that was hilarious. And then with craft beer, it's like you have all these cool labels and stuff. I think I remember getting into Arrogant Bastard just because of the marketing behind those beers, and you have
the ABV is impressive too.
Yeah, and the devil on the cover, and then you read you'll read the description of the beer, and it's like, don't drink this beer. You're not ready for this beer. It's basically like shit talking you. So over time, I grew an appreciation for craft beer. I'm not super heavy on like the super heavy craft beers. These days I like to drink just like lighter like lagers more often than not. But every once in a while I will treat myself to an IPA. Yeah, that looks delicious. So
It's all, I think you're right on trend with what hop heads have been doing. You start off heavy into the IPAs because the juice, the sweet, it's easy to drink a lot of them, and then you realize how much you suffer. So we reel it
that's
back
right.
in, and then we enjoy nice light brews such as this one.
Yeah,
And then
you were talking about learning your limits. I think I might have learned the hard way with some of the heavier stuff.
I still do sometimes. Classic question. I would love to hear about the soundtrack of your youth. When you were growing up in your parents' or guardians' house, what music was playing when you were not in control of the radio? What music did your parents or guardians listen to?
Yeah, so my parents were largely into like oldies, just like old rock and roll from like the 50s and 60s. They like the Beatles and stuff like that. And while I could appreciate that music well enough, it never really clicked with me. I think what really clicked with me was one time I was on a road trip with my aunt, and she popped in AC/DC's Back in Black album, and
Really?
I will never forget hearing the bells to Hell's Bells,
Yes.
setting the tone, and then that fucking sick riff just comes in, and like the hair stands up on the back of your neck, and that is what clicked with me. AC/DC was like my favorite fucking band. Still to this day is one of my favorite bands in the world. So I got into like classic rock, bands like AC/DC, Led Zeppelin, Deep Purple, and then it was just the snowball progression. Got into like Black Sabbath and Iron Maiden, Motorhead, Judas Priest, thrash metal, death metal, black metal, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But it all started with AC/DC. Yeah, so
What was your parents' response to you getting into heavier music?
they were very concerned.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I think the concern really started to kick in when I got really into Metallica, and then my dad, being the kind of researcher that he is, he started looking up this Metallica band, and
Good, that's good.
I
That's
think
very
he
responsible of him.
oh no, of course, very good parenting,
How
but
old were you at this point?
probably like uh 14 or 15. But yeah, he looked up, Metallica, and was like, why do they go by the nickname Alcoholica? What's up with that?
Yeah. Yeah.
um,
Their first
yeah,
album's
and
called
then
what?
right, pedal up your ass, kill them all. Hold on, hold the phone.
Were they, obviously, you like Godzilla? Anyone that's not
Yeah.
watching this and is only listening to this, behind him is multiple Godzilla statues in various colors. Were they as, were meeting your parents, were they as careful and conscientious when it came to your cinematic experiences? Were they making sure you were watching movies that were appropriate, the same way that they were looking into Metallica?
Yeah. Mom and dad were keeping a close eye on what was on the TV for me as a kid. Um, but again, going back to my aunt and my uncle, the same aunt and uncle that showed me AC/DC, they would show me like like horror films, like
Really?
Evil Dead, and
That's amazing.
yeah, like just all the
Your parents are
R-rated
like,
stuff that
they
you're
did
not supposed
what?
to see.
What did you
Yeah, so
watch?
so I would see stuff like Alien and like Terminator, and
Hell
the kind
yes.
of stuff that you're probably not supposed to
Hell
see
yes.
when you're
I
like
remember the
9 or 10 years old.
yeah, exactly. I remember watching Alien around then, and I was like, this is fucking scary, but it's super interesting.
Yeah.
Aliens was the first one I watched.
Oh, very good,
That
very good.
fucking scene there. When, so it's game over, man. But it's just so damn
Bill
good.
Paxton. Oh yeah, dude. Yeah, it's a classic, man. I'm due
Fuck.
for a rewatch.
Yeah, me too, actually. Okay, let's take a break and let's watch Aliens together instead.
Just
So
the rest of the podcast would be a
we're
commentary
just
over
hanging out.
aliens. Yeah.
Watch it takes off. It's the most, anyways. New format, everyone.
Nice.
Was there a band that was ever too much for your parents where you weren't allowed?
I wouldn't say that I wasn't allowed, but I think by the time I got into like bands like Lamb of God, that was probably the first band I got into that had any sort of like guttural
Hey, who
vocals.
gives a fuck? That
Yeah,
probably went over
yeah,
great.
yeah. That really sparked some concern with mom and dad. Uh, but I tried to explain to him. I was like, no, he's singing about like the politics
It's
and the
actually
war
positive.
and
Yeah.
yeah. And
It's,
what was it?
it's artistic
11th,
expression.
yeah, 11th hour is about combating alcoholism and stuff. So
Yeah.
I tried. I really tried to convince them that what I was listening to wasn't total garbage.
But by the way, like most of Metallica's sober now, mom and dad.
Right.
How about your first shows? Did you go see ACD? Was he really the first one? Do you remember the first show you went to go see?
Dude, I was really spoiled with my first show. I got to see I'm not exactly entirely sure what year it was, but it was one of the Sounds of the Underground tours. I think it was like 2007,
Yeah.
2009 maybe. But this was in Louisville before I actually moved up here. I lived in a small rural town in Western Kentucky, so Louisville was like three
I
and a half
played there.
hours away. I'm sorry.
I played Louisville once.
Oh, okay, very cool.
Summer
Come
Slaughter
back.
back in the day. Yeah.
Nice. But yeah, I saw Sounds of the Underground. This was behind the show. This is really weird. The show was behind Waverly Hills Sanatorium, which is a notoriously haunted, abandoned hospital that was built for tuberculosis patients.
That's metal.
Yeah, pretty sick, right? But anyway, I remember being in line for this thing, and the fest wasn't very well organized. And
Mhm.
I'll expand on this later. But I was waiting in line for a very, very long time. But I remember being able to hear Goat Whore
Yeah.
while we're waiting in line, and we were like, me and my buddy were just like so fucking stoked to get in there. So eventually we get into the fest, and I think Darkest Hour was just finishing their set. And then after that, it was Behemoth, uh, Job for a Cowboy, Shadows Fall, Every Time I Die, Chimera, Hatebreed, Guar, and then Lamb of God close the night out.
Wow.
Yeah, so I was just kind of blown away by the
That was
whole
like every
experience.
band back then.
Oh yeah, dude. Yeah,
You saw them
all of
all in
the
one
heavy
day.
hitters. Yeah, this was right when Lamb of God put out like Sacrament. So they were
Mhm.
just like on top of
Mhm.
the world. And going back to how much the fest was in disarray, basically concessions were impossible to get to. So like it was so hard to get water or any sort of beverage to stay hydrated. So eventually the staff members for this festival, they just got out like hoses, right?
Really?
And they did they
Was
just
it was
started
it
spray.
outside or was it inside?
It was outside.
Okay. That makes sense.
Yeah,
So they're
yeah.
just spraying the crowd.
Just spraying the crowd and
Must have been
then
hot as hell too then.
oh yeah, it was over 100 degrees
Mm.
easily. So spraying the crowd with the hoses, and then like the whole just like area in front of the stage turned into this big mud pit. So if you can imagine Cinquar, and then like you're already covered in mud
Fuck yes.
and sweat and all this other debris, and then on top of that you have all the fake blood and splatter and all over you. And I remember by the end of the festival, I was so dehydrated, I was like coughing, like,
Oh,
but I didn't care because it
it was
was just
before
my
COVID. It was
first like
before
metal
COVID,
show experience.
and before
Right.
COVID, so you could cough and it was over.
Yeah, it was perfectly normal at that point.
That's
But yeah,
amazing. What a show.
yeah,
That's awesome. How about your first time on stage? Do you remember your first time on stage?
I do. So my metal band in high school, I think we rented out this community center in our small town. It was a community center in the middle of this park. It was us and like one other band, and yeah, I think we rented out like a PA, and there was like a small stage that was basically consisted of like I don't know what it was. It was like blocks you like put together. It was like one of those like snap together
Yeah.
stages,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
guess
yeah.
for
I know exactly what it is. Yeah.
yeah, for like small community events. yeah, I remember we promoted it around school. And my expectations were like, no one's gonna come to this thing.
Really?
But
Okay.
it turned out to be pretty well. People came out, had a good time. And again, I guess I have a long running history of filling in for other bands. I filled in for the other band that played on bass, and I remember like the
In
singer
on
like
your
asked,
first show,
yeah.
you filled in
It's
on
like
your first. Look at you, Dave.
working overtime. Yeah, my metal band played, I played guitar and sang, and then yeah, I filled in on bass in this other band, and the singer for the other band like passed out in the middle of the set.
Because it was so
So I guess
hot, or because he.
yeah, I guess he was dehydrated or something. So I guess dehydration is another running theme in this episode. But I remember it being like a really rewarding experience, and I mean, for even on the small scale that it was just like, okay, cool. Like you can book a show, promote it, and people
Yeah.
will show up. Imagine that.
And that's I was going to say that. I was going to say anyone that is listening, sometimes you don't have to wait for someone to book you. You can put your own show on, and that's something
Exactly.
that I did when I was young, and it was also a success. So, you know, young bands, if you're listening to this, some don't necessarily wait to get put onto a big show. Put your own show on and push it. You have to push it though. You have to invite people. You have to
Hmm.
talk about it and make all your friends come and their friends and make a party out of it. But any show is a good show. And sometimes you don't have to wait. You can put it on yourself, just like Dave did, I did, and I'm sure many other musicians have done throughout the many, many years of musicians being musicians.
If you want to get something done, do it yourself.
Hell yes. Hell yes, because every show you learn like is like worth 7 band practices.
That's
It's
right.
different. It's different, and you learn so much more. Border World came out in June via Prosthetic. You mentioned Steve Joe was just waiting for you guys to be ready. Finally, you were. Banger EP, just killing it. I'm glad that you had like mentioned it to me when you came through with Storm Ruler, and then Jerry Monk, the metal architect, also sent it to me when it came out, and I was like, "Okay, I know that name," and I was like, "Okay, cool." I think it's interesting. The thematic of it, you've spoken about it before, all about video games. Talk to me about your love of video games to the point where you want to do a whole album about it.
Okay. I guess this goes back to when I first joined Volcandra, and I was, presented with the task of writing lyrics. And at this point, like I didn't really know what lyrical direction I wanted to take with the band. But yeah, for our first record, and I'll get into Border World from here. But our first record, when we were writing that, I was playing a lot of Diablo 2.
Mhm.
And so I was like, you know what, fuck it. I'm just gonna write about like what is currently on my brain right now, what I'm currently nerding out about. And so there's a lot of that on the first record. There's songs about like movies, books, video games. But for Border World, I was like, okay, we'll keep it a little more consistent. So every song's about a video game. Um, and I guess where the incentive to do this came from was, I guess, a lot of metal bands and a lot of black metal bands specifically sing about doom and gloom, or they'll sing about all the terrible things going on in the world. And that's totally cool. Like I get that and I respect that. But for me as a lyricist, it's a lot more fun to write about just like crazy, fantastical stuff that's out of this world, and taking inspiration from, media that I enjoy, whether it be a film or a video game or a series or whatever. It's very easy for me to draw from aspects of those things and put it into music, and I really enjoy the storytelling aspect of it. And kind of just painting a picture for the listener, if people care enough to listen to the lyrics and listen to the words. And if you're also a nerd like me or any of the other guys in the bands, you'll find an appreciation for that. And if not, then hopefully the music still works for you, and you can get down with it anyway. So
That's super interesting. So the other guys are also into video games, which is was curious if you had to convince them. Like, no, trust me, this is really cool. And they're
yeah,
like,
yeah. I
dude, video
mean,
games fucking suck. So I'm pretty sure if I
nah,
came to Cryptopsy with this thematic scheme that you'd put onto the EP, they would have some questions.
we're all nerds to varying degrees. So I don't think anyone was specifically concerned with it. And I don't want to be like pigeonholed as like, oh, we're a video game metal band,
Mm-hmm. Because there's
but
not many.
currently, right,
Who
right.
else is there? I was sitting, like, who else writes about video? No one. I can't think of anyone.
Well, Storm Ruler. A lot of their songs are based off of like Dark Souls or
Yeah.
Elder Scrolls, stuff like that. Um, but yeah, I mean, there's probably more than you would think.
Mm.
Just some bands aren't so overt about it. But I'm not going to sit here and try to pretend that I'm not writing about video games. I'm not going to like try and tell you I'm some like prophetic guy singing about something else. I'll just
How
shoot it
cool
to
would
you
it be
straight.
to you do a festival and there's like video games there that people can play while you're playing?
Oh, there actually is.
Really?
There is this band called Lords of the Trident. They're from
Ah,
Wisconsin.
I feel like
They
I've heard them. Yeah.
they hold yeah, they're a sick power metal band, incredible. But they hold a festival every year. It's called Mad with Power Fest, and
Hmm.
again, another band I was filling in for. They're called Stagecoach Inferno. They're from Louisville. They're a Wild West themed heavy metal band. I was playing guitar for them at this festival that they played, and so around the crowd area, there's a bunch of like gaming cabinets and stuff, like
Exactly.
old retro cabinets, and yeah, the whole thing is like video game themed. So
What about
maybe one day
in the pit though? Can you circle pit with the game cabinets while you're playing and nailing high scores?
that would be that would be excellent. But no, 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 I don't think
I know
that
these things are
they've
super
got that figured
expensive,
out
so
yet.
obviously not no, but
Right.
that's
Well, maybe
incredible.
when VR is a lot more advanced, maybe we
Oh,
can get to that
hey.
point. Something to think about.
What could you be doing in VR that's sort of like a circle pit move?
I don't know.
Mm.
They'll figure it out one day.
How about just doing vocals and writing vocals for something that you didn't compose guitar for? Is that something that's new? But obviously you did the Into the Azure back in 2020 with them, where you're also just doing vocals. But being a guitarist and vocalist, I'm curious if it was different how you wrote vocals. Was it more freeing because you don't have to play guitar? And is it different writing vocals for something that you didn't write the guitar to?
Yeah, it's completely different. Yeah, like you said, I'm used to writing vocals over guitar parts, and
Mm-hmm.
you can really only do so much. I mean, you could go all out, but that takes so much practice to lock everything in. And
Only
when
Dave
you're
Davis.
singing in, dude, I fucking love Revocation. Dave Davidson is the shit. Huge fan. But yeah, I think what that boils down to is when you're writing lyrics over guitar parts that you're also playing, you have to pinpoint like what syllables fall on like what fret on the fretboard. So there is
Interesting.
there's a lot of
Interesting. Talk,
restrictions
talk,
there.
talk to me more about that, because I never heard anyone say that to me.
Uh, yeah, I don't know, man. It's just a lot of like sitting down and playing the song over and over and over and over again until like it's second nature in your brain, and then figuring out what vocal patterns like work and what is not going to like get you tongue tied in the middle of it. Uh, it's honestly kind of a hard thing to explain, but it's just one of those like muscle memory things that you just have to cram
Fascinating.
into your skull over time. But yeah, when it comes to Volcandra, um, it's honestly it's a lot of fun writing for this band, writing lyrics for this band, because I do get to be a lot more free with the vocal cadences and how many lyrics are in the song. Like some of these songs have like so many lines of lyrics in them, and that ends up biting me in the ass too, because after certain songs I'm like completely winded. But it is a lot more fun because I do get to elaborate and expand on a lot of the things that I want to describe in a song. Um, and it's a lot more fun on stage too, because you just kind of get to you know swing your fist around and headbang, and you're not tied to a vocal mic or anything. So honestly, it's a lot of fun. I really really enjoy writing and performing in this band. It's a total blast.
I think that's awesome. What about would be a perfect tour package for Volcandra to put you in front of the perfect crowd where everyone walks out that night and they are a brand new Volcandra fan? So let's say Volcandra and three bands. What three bands would really fit well and would be like a dream, basically? The dream tour question.
Okay. This might be kind of like a basic answer because I'm gonna pick some bigger bands. It was very, very sick to play with Cannibal Corpse, Abominable, and Goat Whore. I think Volcander would fit exceptionally well on a bill with those bands, and those bands are huge, so you're guaranteed a pretty decent crowd every night as the opener. I would imagine anyway.
And they're super fun on top of that.
They are loads of fun, loads of fun.
30 seconds for the internet. Cheers to the internet gods for letting us connect and not lag.
Cheers.
Something that I think is super important that we should really focus on, and something I've been talking a lot about on recent podcasts, is mental health. How do you cope with when you're feeling down? What is your coping mechanism? What are your tactics to help bring yourself out of the dumps when you're feeling like shit?
I think the thing that works best for me is if I'm just like not feeling good about myself. One thing that always cures that for me is just going and exercising, just going to the gym, listening to your favorite album, hitting the treadmill, lifting some weights. Um, it's always a surefire thing. Every time I do that, I walk out and I feel a lot better about myself. I feel like I've accomplished something. And I think what it boils down to is you can get bogged down with anxiety. You can worry about anything that's going on in the world or in your life, in your personal life. But at least with exercise and physical activity, you are in control of your body. You can control your health, and your physical health coincides with your mental health. So it's just a win-win overall. And it's always something that is respectable. I don't think anyone's going to look down on you for going and getting in better shape. And if you have some friends that are feeling down, take them with you, take them to the gym.
That's something you've done.
They might feel like shit in the process,
you're worried about one of your friends, and you call them up and you say, "Come, we're going to the gym now." You've done that?
I have on occasion. Yeah. Most of the time I do prefer to work out alone. It's easier for me to focus, but I mean, that's always a surefire thing. Yeah, including your friends in general in any sort of activity, if they are feeling down, checking on your friends, telling you that you love them, it's never too late.
No, and it's metalheads, we love each other. We should tell each other, hug your friends, be in contact with those you love. There's nothing wrong about being sappy when you love someone, and it's important. It's important for us to tell each other, and I don't care what anyone says about that. Beer collabs. Obviously, I love them. I have one right here. That's mine. I know that you have one on your side. That's yours. So let's talk about making beer collabs.
I do. So this is the Colossi Lager, also by Against the Grain. So this was done in partnership with Volcandra. Against the Grain put this together for us for our EP release earlier this year. It's just a nice, refreshing light lager. I think we're sitting at 4.5 alcohol by volume, so you can crush a few of these and you won't be knocked on your ass after a couple. It's the perfect beer to drink after you've finished a set, because we all know that that's the most satisfying beer you can have.
It really fucking is, and that's true. And I've tried the like drinking on stage thing, not like getting drunk, but like having a beer on stage, and it's either it gets knocked over or I forget to drink it. But after the show, one of the best beers you can ever have. It's just amazing.
So yeah. And I've always noticed like a beer on stage is like, yeah, like you said, you're either bound to knock it over, or like I always end up going for the water instead, because the beer doesn't really help your vocals all that much.
No,
it's a good idea in theory, but it's better to wait after the set. Absolutely.
Hydration, people. Keep those vocals hydrated. Very important. And beer actually dehydrates it, even though it is liquid and has a lot of water in it. Alcohol is actually horrible for your voice. And when you are dehydrated, the last thing to get rehydrated in your body apparently are your vocal cords. So drink lots of water.
Wow.
I have been told that. I'm very lucky to have the podcast. Keeps me busy throughout this wonderful time we've been living in. Crypt Hops has only played a few shows, a handful of shows, 2 shows since the whole pandemic took off. So I'm very lucky that I have the podcast, because right before I sit down here, I get the same sort of vibe, feeling as if I was about to step on stage. Am I prepared enough? Am I ready? Are the internet gods going to be with us tonight? It's how I've been filling the void of performing. Now you have been busy and have been playing a lot, but what would be something that helped you get that same little vibe before you started touring again?
I think just staying creative really helps. Whether it's just, sitting down and just trying to put a song together. Like if you have like a riff in your head, you want to get it out, or writing lyrics, just any sort of like creative activity that just keeps the juices going, just keeps the wheels in your head turning. I don't know. I think it's just really important to stay active with pushing your craft forward, whatever it may be, whether it's playing guitar, playing drums, writing lyrics, brewing beer. It's important to never go stagnant. Don't just be a consumer, be a creator.
I like that. Back to Godzilla. Talk to me about your love of Godzilla. Why Godzilla? And I there's other things up there I see behind you, but it's Godzilla that I see the most of, so that's why the question's going there. So talk to me about that. Why Godzilla?
Well, again, going back to my aunt and uncle, that was one of the many things I was introduced to at a young age. And not just Godzilla. I'm a huge fan of like all sorts of Japanese science fiction and fantasy. A lot of it starts with Godzilla, but I mean, shit, man, you have like Ultraman, Kamen Rider, Gamera. The list goes on and on and on. The rabbit hole goes very, very deep. And I'm a lover of practical effects in movies. I love, yeah. I mean, if you have something on screen, in my opinion, it's always going to look more impressive. Or I'm sorry, if you have something on camera, it's always going to look more impressive than a CG generated image. So yeah, Japanese science fiction, that's my fucking bread and butter, man. It's something that I can always come to as like a comfort food kind of thing. And it's something that continuously inspires me, because it's just this very fantastical thing that has this flair that a lot of it doesn't have. And not to downplay other films from other countries, but the Japanese, man, there's something special about it. I don't know, maybe it's nostalgia, but that's a huge thing for me. And I do love collecting. I love the art that goes into sculpting and painting figures and stuff. Yeah, and it's nice to come home to a very sick collection. I also collect records, and we have, my girlfriend and I have a very extensive movie collection. I collect VHS tapes.
Really?
Yeah. I could take the phone around the whole apartment and show you all sorts of stuff. But yeah. We like having cool stuff around here.
When is there going to be a Volcandra Japanese sci-fi film thematic album coming?
Well, I'll tell you what, I think I don't know if you've ever heard of this band. They're called Oxygen Destroyer. They're a death metal band.
Yeah, they're on what label are they on? They're on Redefining Dark.
Redefining Dark.
Yeah.
Yep. I think they hold the reins to being the go-to band that sings about giant monsters and stuff. But there's plenty of other stuff you can dabble in. I will say on the first Volcandra record, we do have a song. It's called "The Weight of Darkness," and it's about a Japanese science fiction film called Yamato Takeru, which the best way to describe that movie is like, it's basically like Clash of the Titans if it were made in Japan. It's the best way I can put it. It's fucking awesome. It's a little obscure, so it might be kind of hard to find. In the States, it's called Orochi, the Eight-Headed Dragon. But yeah, Yamato Takeru is one of my all-time favorites, and has a big-ass eight-headed dragon and a bunch of other crazy monsters in it. It's a lot of fun.
Sounds like fun. Sounds like something I'll have to check out for sure. Awesome Destroyer rule. One last question, classic wrap-up question. It probably does happen to you sometimes because you mentioned that it does when you enjoy too many 8.2% Citra Pat IPAs. So I'm curious, what is your hangover cure?
Ooh, my hangover cure. I think it starts off with getting out of bed and then immediately laying down on the couch and then rising on the couch for at least a half an hour and then being like, okay, God, I gotta drink some water. Okay, and then I drink some water. And then I probably order like a huge breakfast from somewhere. I get it like delivered. Eat that, take a nap, wake up, feel slightly better, and then just kind of watch TV all day. And yeah, I've tried so many different things, man. And everyone has their own like, oh, well, you got to try this, you got to do this. Like, I don't know, like, there's never been like this like one surefire thing that that really cures the hangover. But with time comes wisdom, and I've come to find out that to help prevent a hangover, I try to, towards the end of the night when I know that I'm reaching my limit, I'll try and switch out a beer for maybe just like a regular seltzer water.
Yeah.
Like nice
Yeah.
Perrier. I like Aha's. I like La Croix, if I'm saying that correctly. Yeah. And because a lot of it is the oral fixation, the
100%.
carbonation.
And it's the
taking a drink.
social action of it too. That's
Yeah.
a wise move. That
Liquid Death too. They're carbonated waters you can get. Excellent.
Absolutely. Wise words, Dave. I like that. Dave, thank you so much for taking the time hanging out with me, talking about life, music, and craft beer. I had a blast. I hope you did as well. Everyone check out Border World, brand new Volcandra record. It's a banger of an EP. Sorry, Border World, brand new EP. It's a banger of an EP. You should check it out. Came out via Prosthetic in June. Dave, this was awesome. I really appreciate you taking the time to hang with me.
Thank you so much, Matt. Cheers, buddy.
Cheers.
Hey, thank you all so much for listening right today. You know that I love and appreciate that. Man, this is an awesome conversation. I love when conversations such as these happen. When I bump into someone, we hit it off, and then I get encouraged to have a conversation with them afterwards from a publicist. I just love when that happens, and this was one of those instances. I really had a great time chatting with Dave. I really enjoy that new Volcandra EP. You should check it out if you haven't already. Massive cheers to Dave. I cannot wait to hang out with him again. I know that I'll see him soon because he's always on tour with everyone. Hopefully it will be with Volcandra coming up here throughout Montreal soon, or I will see him when I'm down on tour as well. Massive cheers, Dave. Thank you so much for being a part of Vox&Hops. Now, if you enjoyed this Vox&Hops episode, you should sign up to the Vox&Hops Metal Podcast mailing list. You can on my website, voxandhops.com. That's VOXANDHOPS.com. And when you do that, you shall receive one email a month that will contain all of the details of everything that has happened recently in the world of the Vox&Hops Metal Podcast. You will get to see which episodes I dropped recently. You will also get to see which episodes I have coming up. You will also get to hear about any projects I have in the works before I announce them to the public. And you'll get to see which albums the Vox&Hops album review crew have reviewed recently. And you'll also get to see which bands Jerry Monk, the metal architect himself, has added to the Brewtal Awakenings playlist. The most extreme, the most fresh metal music in the world. You want to know what's happening in the music scene? You want to know what's happening underground? Well, the Brewtal Awakenings playlist is what you want to be checking out. There is just so much going on in the world of the Vox&Hops Metal Podcast. I'd hate for you to miss a single thing, so please sign up to the mailing list. The Vox&Hops Metal Podcast is brought to you by Sound Talent Media and Evergreen Podcasts. I hope you have a killer rest of the week. I have one more episode coming up this Friday, but until then, remember to enjoy life, metal, and craft beer. Cheers, Vox&Hops heads.